Today is May 4th. I cannot believe we're in the last month of the school year. About 2 weeks. At a high school, it's 2 weeks of instruction, and then we got finals. So it is coming closer and closer. At this time, we don't have any public comment. On today's agenda, we're going to talk about literacy instructional priorities for the coming school year. Lengthy conversation about compensation and budget. And then we're also going to go through an activity to talk through aspiring board goals. So I'm going to hand it over to our Chief Academic Officer, Heather Petrosini.
Hi.
Hi.
How's everybody?
Good.
Good.
How about you?
Great. All right. So tonight we're going to walk through kind of where we've been this current year and what next year will look like. Our coordinator for elementary language arts has also given a survey, so I'm going to walk you through what we found in that survey to get some feedback for teacher voice, and then all of that lines up into the instructional framework we've designed for Georgetown for literacy. So in this current year, year one, this was year one of SAVAS implementation. That was our new curricular resource. Obviously, that was a little bumpy as you adopt something in its first year, and it's drastically different from any resource you've had before. Our teachers spent a lot of time in the beginning problem solving and troubleshooting that new implementation. It just felt very different than prior resources. We also had curriculum planning guides that were heavily focused on standards and the resource. We spent a lot of time this year talking about assessment. I call it the year of assessment. Assessment practices, what will the assessment look like, what should we change about the assessment, and then from there, understanding what that data was telling us. Next year, we're going to spend a lot of time more focused on what does the actual instruction look like and how will we know that students are learning, because it will be year two of this SAVAS implementation. And with that, we have some skills under our belt with this new resources. We've also added an addition of Amplify as a supplemental resource, and that is going to be for skills. So what we call foundational skills, or that primary foundational learning, that's the phonics that you often hear us talk about, phonemic awareness, alphabetic knowledge, all of that. So that's going to be a supplemental resource because we know our teachers really enjoy that. We've redesigned the curriculum planning guides, and those have a weekly map in them so that you know exactly what you're teaching and on what day. They also have extra days built in, we're calling buffer days, because we know things come up and we lose a day here and we lose a day there. And then we are also adding a component that is a resource to address misconceptions in learning, and that way you can look at that at the front end, and you don't have to always wait till you're there with your PLC to say, when will students get tripped up? We kind of know the patterns, and we can put that out in front, and that way teachers can make adjustments. And then the assessments will be baked into the curriculum documents from the beginning. We won't be building them as we go, so we're actually already started working on all the assessments for next year. So those will be linked directly in the document, so as teachers are starting a unit, they can plan with the end in mind, open that up and start to work backwards. That way we can use the data to make instructional decisions. So some of the strengths we learned from the survey was that teachers said that the new curriculum resource really increased some rigor. We can attribute that to the learning in these units is around themes instead of around genres. So if the theme is problem solving, or that's not a good example, friendships, then everything in that unit is around friendships in the classroom, instead of this whole unit being about historical fiction. And so they were built more around those themes, kind of how many of us started teaching. We swung the pendulum one way, it's going back the other. Increased student engagement with the units, because if you weren't bought into it, because you didn't like that genre, you still have multiple entry points this way because it's around universal themes. There was some stronger clarity in instruction, and of course, most importantly, it is aligned to the science of reading practices. So that's really where we're making sure in K-1-2 there's strong foundational skills, but that we are building, especially in the areas of comprehension, vocabulary, and talking about our reading. Our teachers throughout the year reported that they adjusted the curriculum regularly based on student needs, the pacing of the units, and sometimes the rigor that was in the unit, and that's all appropriate. We have to teach the students that are in front of us, not the students that a publisher dreamed up. There also shows a level of professional decision-making by teachers as they were able to make those decisions based on the students they're teaching, and that's what we want, empowered teachers. The pacing of these units is a consistent pressure point that our teachers experienced this year. There is so much in this resource, and you have about 120 minutes at the primary grades to teach English language arts. There's more in there than you could possibly teach in 120 minutes. If you're using that resource and saying, I have to turn the page and I have to go from top to bottom, left to right, it's going to feel really tight. So as the year went on, our teachers learned, like, you know what, I don't need to do this on Monday. I can bring this up come Thursday and it'll flow better. And so those were some instructional decisions our teachers made. And then there was variation in implementation. So some teachers reported that they opened the teacher edition on the first day of school and they started going through it and they never deviated from it. Other teachers self-reported that they used it as a guide, but they were making some strong decisions based on what they were seeing for their students. So some of the challenges we saw was this foundational skills gap and pacing and coherence issues. And so that's where we made the decision that this year we'd be looking at, do we want to bring in a supplemental resource for phonics, phonemic awareness, and that foundational skill building. We went through a process there where we brought in a whole bunch of vendors, teachers could come through and look at it, and then there was a core group that also looked at all the resources, and then there was voting, and we ended up with Amplify, which was our resource the year before, but just for the phonics, what we call foundational skills. So that part was there. The pacing and coherence, which I already brought up. There's a need to differentiate structures, and some of that is teaching style, right? Like, I like to do it this way, I like to do it this way. There's also different types of learners in all of our classrooms. We have emergent bilingual students, we have students receiving special education entitlements. And so we need to think about the structures that we put in place, not just pick them up and put them in because the textbook said so, but my kids need a break here, or this doesn't quite work for me. So that kind of change. We found a level of misalignment in writing. And I just want to pause for a minute here and talk about that. What the curricular resource is asking us to do isn't how writing shows up on formal assessments that we see at the end of the year. They were very different. STAR asks students to do a short constructed response or an extended constructed response, and the way it was in the curriculum was a little bit, at some points I can say deeper, and at some points I can say much more shallow. And so as we started to redesign assessments as the year went on, we started to think about what do students need to do at the end of the year on STAR, and then how can we backwards map that into the teaching and on the assessment. And so we made an adjustment there, but that's not to say that students didn't get to experience the other type of writing, but we know this thing called an extended constructed response can be a little bit challenging, and so we wanted to make sure our students were getting feedback of that along the way. So there was one modification, serious modification that we made during the year. And then the access and the usability. So we were talking about this earlier and laughing about it, and those of you that have been teachers may remember this if you're as old as I am. When we started teaching, we had these teacher editions in front of us. They were these really thick, heavy, spiral-bound books, and you'd be like flipping through them with them on your lap and sticky noting them. Well then, especially for our teachers that entered the workforce during COVID, they never had that experience. And so then we brought in a resource that was more like these resources we had 20 years ago. That was just a challenge for so many people to get used to, and even us, we would kind of think about, I've got used to not using that, and now I'm having to navigate through that. So as we kind of move forward, we have 5 priorities for
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask about the writing misalignment.
Mm-hmm.
Is writing part of SOLIS?
Yes.
So it's all included
Yes, ma'am.
within SOLIS?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
okay.
Yes. It just looks different than how it shows up on, I want to say, formal standardized assessments, not just STAR, but any type of formal standardized assessment. It was, and like I said, in some places much looser, and in some places much more rigid and not deep enough. So there were just adjustments as we gave the first assessment in about the 6th week of school. Teachers were giving tons of feedback, like, this isn't what it's gonna look like at the end of the year, can we make some adjustments? And we made that right then and started to say, okay, well, if that's not gonna work for us, what will work?
Okay, so these assessments that you're talking about have writing that they have to do them, and these are not connected with in class, and they're not connected with maps or what, this is another a different assessment, and what you call those?
So those are essentially your end of unit assessments.
Okay, so there's an end of unit, and is that part of SOVIS or that part of the district-made assessment?
I love that question. It's a little bit more complicated than that. SAVIS gave us assessments, and we started to use those as a base and then made modifications to them as we looked at the assessments. We don't feel like this is rigorous enough. We feel like this is too rigorous. And so that's where we made some adjustments as well.
Okay.
You know, trustees, I appreciate Heather and her team making moderate to significant adjustments to the curriculum, because there's no such thing as a perfect curriculum, right? We can switch to a different course next year, and 50% of our staff is going to say, well, we liked it what we had last year, and this one's not as good, right? But the thing we don't want teachers doing is burning their energy on having to make adjustments from what we've spent money on giving them, right? So the plan is for Heather and her team to be able to have something that really lays out a curriculum sequence that addresses the needs of students and really responds to teacher feedback in that way. So, you know, the addition of Amplify is a response to that. But that writing piece in particular, we shouldn't have teachers burning their energy on, oh, this resource we have doesn't quite do it, so we have to make something on our own.
Heather, it sounds like there's a good chance it was hard for teachers, especially maybe newer ones, to figure out what to prioritize if everything was so dense per each unit. And it sounds like you all have done quite a bit of work to create, like the curriculum pacing or planning guide, the assessments that you've built off of the SOVIS ones, all will help give guidance to teachers so that when they're not sure where to go or how much or how fast to move, they can use those. And we didn't have those in place.
That's right.
Which is, great. It sounds like a lot of work on y'all's end and like an appropriate next step for internalization of a curriculum.
That's exactly it. And I know Hilda was going to come. Is she behind me? Okay. So I want to just give a shout out to Hilda. Even as we've built out suggested schedules of, hey, this is what your instructional block should look like, Hilda and I got together, was it last week, and said, if this is what SOVIS recommends, and we know that this is a pain point in fitting all of that in, what should the sequence across a week look like? And then making sure our curriculum documents match that. So really it's taking off that constant wait, I can't, I should, maybe I shouldn't. We want teachers to be able to get in there and practice, plan for execution, the internalization piece. They can take the lesson, they can tune it and make it better, as opposed to, I need to just figure out what it is I'm doing tomorrow and how I'm gonna fit all of this into the block.
Well, thank y'all. That sounds like a lot of work.
It's good work, it's fun work.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. So these are our 5 strategic priorities as we move through the next year. So again, we want to make sure that foundational literacy is in place. And so the conversation we had back at Cooper earlier in the year, we know when we get K1, 2 right, 3, 4, 5 start to feel a little bit easier. That is multi-year work. You cannot get it done just with one fell swoop. It takes a moment. But as we start to see that, we also made an alignment document, Hilda did, and it's fabulous about how do we work through these foundational skills and which resource is taking the lead, right? So I'm not in SOVIS trying to figure out oh wait, am I supposed to be over an amplify? It kind of says, if this is what the pacing is, then where is that in amplify? And how do I get that launched? Because we know that's a little bit quicker, it's a little bit faster. People feel really comfortable with it, and we liked the outcomes we saw in that particular area. To the middle of the year report where I said there's some kind of missing pieces here, and we need to look and see, is that the resource, and can we supplement? So that's that part. Refining the curriculum and coherence and pacing, that all comes into the curriculum guides that we're rewriting. One piece of feedback we got at teacher advisory was teachers have students in front of them tomorrow, and we traditionally have been putting these long lists of standards as the front page of the document, and they're pages and pages long. Let's just go ahead and put the map at the front. They're the ones that have students in front of them tomorrow. We can hyperlink so that it goes and pushes you down into the standards so you can get it under the hood and see what it is you're teaching, but we want to see that up at the top so that you can spend your energy in the right way. Aligning writing to outcomes, we know what that writing needs to look like, and it actually starts to show up over and over again. It's more like an AP test when you really start to think into it and do that linear projection of why are we teaching kids to write this way? Oh, because it shows up this way. And it's kind of the writing we all do, citing text evidence. You can't just write to write like that. And then we want to improve the teacher experience around all of this. So from all of that, our instructional council and our curriculum coordinators really worked on creating this literacy framework for Georgetown. We did it for numeracy. We also did it for assessment practices because there's many frameworks that we need to develop. And our focus is really on the foundational literacy, all students having access to grade level complex text. So not just grade level text, it's like a level 28 or whatever we used to say with levels, but it's also a complex text. We see that literacy is a shared responsibility of all the contents, not just the English teachers, not just the first grade teachers. There should be reading and writing in every subject, and so it's everyone's shared responsibility. We also believe that our students should have multiple opportunities to cite text evidence in their reading and their writing and in their speaking. And then we also want to honor the unique strengths that our multilingual learners bring to the classroom, and the fact that we need to develop languages simultaneously and not in absence of another. So that's kind of the work we've done and how we ended up with the literacy framework, and I can take any other questions you might have.
Can you just clarify for me
Yes.
when you said that you landed on Amplify? What you meant by
That process?
exactly? Yeah.
So it was around President's Day, we had every vendor that we were looking at come in. So that included Bluebonnet, Amplify, all these different vendors. And people were able to come through this building and look at the resource. And then Hilda had a core group that was also looking at all of the resources and scoring the resource. And then we take a vote. That group takes a vote, I'm not involved in it, and then they make a recommendation of this is what we would like to see added to the curriculum. So it is set up with the TEAC certification that you approved last month. Now that Amplify had just a phonics component that we could adopt as a supplemental resource, and so that's what we did. To give teachers what they want and what they felt like they needed.
And there'll be some teachers that are familiar with this already.
All of Georgetown. Well, although those that weren't here when we were using it, but that was a resource they were begging for in the fall, and around October I said, you know, if you know you get good results, let's go ahead. We knew it was on the approved list, we just knew we needed to make some changes to our process to make it work long term.
That access and usability piece seems like, in my head, the narrative is the platform and the technology that supports all of this could get busy.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think it's good that we're prioritizing teacher experience. It feels like you could do all these other things, and if teachers aren't set up to knock it down well or quickly, it could be hard to get results. But can you speak more to that one? Like, what are we doing, and how? It's a little hard knowing that the curriculum may be kind of clunky.
Yes.
It seems like additional work for us to have to do.
It is. I think in the age of so many publishers and cost effectiveness wanting resources to be affordable, they've gone to these online, like, oh, here is the teacher edition and it's online, and it's those flip books online, but then you still have to get into it, and so there's that. And then there is also the piece that many of our teachers that started in 2020-ish never even got to learn 6 years later, or 5 years later, when we never even got to learn how to use a TE and how to just kind of move through it quickly, because it does feel like sometimes, I'm sure we can all remember, you open it up and you felt like you had to read every word, and that is not a good use of your time. That is why we've made that map. It almost looks like a calendar at the front of the unit. Tells you how many days, how many buffer days. Here's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If Friday is a holiday, we're not putting a lesson on that day. Like, we're going ahead and blocking that out and kind of truly mapping it out for you already. And then we'll say plus or minus 2 days, but all of that then links into the documents. And then we're telling you right on there as well, which was in our curriculum documents this year, this is page 55 in the teacher manual, or this is what you need to print out, that type of thing. Trying to take the load off of it. Even this year's STEM scopes, teachers were really struggling with all the printing that had to be done, so we went ahead and made books, and then had the books delivered to them. Just make it easier.
Right.
Even if you don't use every page, it's okay. We want you to
Heather,
get the
I'm kind of
resources.
fast forwarding a little bit, but let's pretend it's, we have this framework, and it's October of next year, and we're looking at these same board members. What are the data points that help us explain to the board that this is working, or we definitely have the momentum in the right track?
I think if we don't have a year that starts with people feeling so frustrated with the resource and how to even, what am I teaching tomorrow? So that would be one data point, just that feedback that we get from teachers in real time. I think another piece would be these unit assessments. If we have these assessments baked in at the front end, that really does contribute to that backwards planning. What's our end goal? How do we want students to do it? So we should start to gain some momentum there. And I think student writing will look very different because we have an idea in mind what we need this writing to look like. We also want those students that just love to write, we still want them to write for pleasure. We want them to write to understand the world, but we also want them to know how to answer a prompt. So we should be able to get some data on that, and we can continue to survey staff and ask them, how's it going, is this helpful? On the bottom of every document, we're also putting a link for give us feedback right now, so you don't have to leave the document to give us feedback. It's right there at the bottom. And we're also putting together some chats so that people can get help in real time, and they can just type it in there. We have that this year for Savas, but we're putting that in all our documents moving forward.
Awesome. Lots and lots of work.
Yeah.
Trustees, we're going to move forward into, do you have any other questions for Heather? We're going to move forward into discussing compensation and budget. So, one of the two biggest responsibilities the board has is for approving the district budget. So we're going to share our current, as of May 4th, projections with you. We're going to talk about possible compensation options. Ultimately, my responsibility is to listen to your feedback and bring to you a final recommendation for what we should consider as a school district. I'm going to preface this by saying that talking about school funding is probably the most complicated thing to talk about for the general public. You are well steeped in this. So one request I have of this time together is just ask the questions to help come away with as complete an understanding as possible. And the second is you're not being asked to make a decision or on anything for tonight, but to just feel well informed so that you can help us as a team bring you the best recommendation. Okay. So over the last 2 years, we've had these parameters and priorities. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to are these items in red. We have a balanced budget focused on strategic priorities as a parameter for this work. We have avoid negative academic impact to core instructional staff. We have competitive salaries across the board, maintain class size, especially at elementary, and then lastly, increase teacher compensation. And we are at the point where all of those parameters and priorities are in conflict with each other. It's like we're locked up here. And, Superintendent, I take responsibility for the fact that we did not do reductions in expenses. There are significant reductions in expenses this year. We could have increased class size, we could have addressed programming to varying degrees, but we did not do that this year. But nor do I think it would have completely solved this issue we have here. Okay, so Kenneth is going to talk to us about medical insurance. You may be wondering, why are we starting off talking about medical insurance? This is the gigantic elephant, saber-toothed tiger in the room, right? And so I've talked to a number of superintendents across the state, and anyone who's self-funded for insurance is dealing with insurmountable costs. And so I'm going to steal a little bit of Kenneth's thunder, but you can see in order to just maintain costs and not put an inordinate burden on the employee, Georgetown ISD would need to contribute about $2.7 million more in covering health insurance costs just to keep us in a good place. And this has been a multi-year issue that's been growing and growing and growing. But I'm gonna let Kenneth take it from here. And Kenneth, don't be surprised if I interrupt you a couple times.
All right, so I'm going to basically talk about 2 points in the timeline. First, with the rear view mirror, what's happening in the rear view and as of right now, and then what's the projection, what are we going to do about next year given that, and how are we going to pay the bill type of thing. So our fiscal year, as you know, ends on June 30. So when you look at last year, as the board knows, we lost $3.4 million last year on the medical fund side. We've lived, in terms of financials, 9 months of this fiscal year. We know how we've done through March of this year. And then using that to then forecast out the rest of the fiscal year, we're on pace to lose another $6.3 million this year. So between both of those, we're in the hole, just round numbers to say $10 million. So just to get that fund out of the hole to start next fiscal year with, we need a $10 million transfer from the general fund over to the medical fund. What you'll see and what we've talked about before, well, how are we going to do that? That's using the property value audit, the one-time money that we're expected to get, which is a little over $12 million. We're planning to transfer literally $12 million of that over into here. $10 million of that to cover this, and then we'll get into another use of it down here at the bottom line. So that's the rear view mirror. $10 million worth of bad news, but how are we going to cover that? With the property value audit, that's the plan there. Okay. All right, so now let's talk about the budget piece. 26-27, what does that look like? Our initial estimates, and these aren't locked in yet, but is that next year's cost will be $18.4 million for medical insurance. Since we're self-funded, that's got to be paid either out of the employee's paycheck or out of the district's contribution. Okay? One of the things I'm going to talk about is called next level. But big picture, and we've had this discussion around SLT and all that sort of thing, as Dr. Patteville said, and I'll just say it how I feel, medical is our biggest issue that we've got to address, because literally the path we're on, and this is us and everybody else, it's an unsustainable path. And I'll give you perspective on that. Our projected cost for next year is $18 million. Okay? Medical, in the rearview mirror, historically, it's like it goes up 10% or more year after year after year. Okay? Well, there's a thing called Rule of 72. If you invest it, how long does it take to double your money? So take 72 divided by your growth rate, like 10%. How long does it take? Well, 10 into 70 is 7 times. It takes 7 years. If your inflation's going up 10% a year, it takes 7 years to double. Well, in 6 or 7 years, that number as 18 is going to be 36 million. So just let that, so where's that gonna come from? In 6 years from now, if the state only kicks in, you know, an adjustment of like 1.7% or something like that of adjustment, you can't cover that. And an employee isn't gonna wanna work, well, hey, just take all that out of my paycheck, you know, that's not sustainable. So that's the deal where fundamentally we've got to do something different, okay? And so the starting point of that, and what we're planning to do for next year, and it's in the budget projection, Next Level is a company that came to us, and the way they do business is simply this. And so here's the sales pitch. And I'll just say Amanda's every employee. And so I say, hey, Amanda, I got the board to approve this, it's Next Level. Here's the thing, we're gonna cover that premium cost you, so it's not gonna cost you anything, nothing's gonna come out of your paycheck. For the district, it costs $30 to cover Amanda, it costs another $30 to cover anybody else in her family. Okay, she could have 10 kids, and it's all paid for that $60 a month contribution. What's the upside to Amanda? She can go there, like for her primary care, she could go for urgent care, she could go for emergency type coverage. Anything she goes to use that they do costs her nothing. So let that soak in. You know, break my arm, have to go fix it, and it's whatever. Go to the emergency room, it's going to cost thousands of dollars to get that arm fixed. You know, I can do a televisit, I can do lab work. All those things are free. Okay. So as an employee, what a benefit. The employer covers her cost. Anytime she uses it, it doesn't cost her a dime. Okay. On the district side, okay, I'm representing the district. What's my upside? It's going to cost me about $700. It's going to cost us about $700,000 to give that benefit to anybody on medical. Okay. Well, the expectation from Next Level is that our cost, because the cost that would normally have gone through our plan isn't hitting our plan. Next Level doesn't forward that visit on to our insurance carrier. They're eating that. When an employee goes, it doesn't hit our plan. Okay? And so by the net of the $1.25 million is, even after paying the $700,000, we'll cover that plus save that amount of money. Okay? And Next Level gives a guarantee that if, hey, they don't at least save us what it cost them, they'll write a check for the difference. Okay? They're going to get to us, a proposal hadn't come yet, but literally locations of potential sites, and we can choose from that in terms of where they'll actually put their first facility here. Their time of operation is from 9 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. Okay? You could call a teacher on break, could say, hey, I don't feel so well, I got a break at 1 o'clock. I could do set up a televisit, call them up, say, hey, I don't feel well, call in an antibiotic, free. I never have to leave my desk in order to have that visit. Okay?
So I'm going to break in and I'm going to tell you something that's probably blindingly obvious, but I just want to do a little bit of background on how did this insurance thing become such a problem for school districts, right? So prior to being self-funded, we were with TRS Active Care, okay? So let me give you an example. In districts that are still in TRS Active Care, the employee pays, or the combination of employee and district pays $485 a month, or for the year, for insurance, okay? So $485 means if Amanda, our employee, goes to the doctor, has things happen, and the total contribution of $485 from all the employees doesn't cover her and a bunch of other people's bills, well, the state covers everything over, right? And when you're self-funded, it's different. So our total contribution right now is $530, okay? Which is a crazy amount compared to what it was like 5 or 6 years ago. So when you add up 530 with all the employees, we get to about $12 million total, right? That's our fund for paying off all of the health insurance costs. But the problem is if you have multiple issues happen, and I'm really simplifying this, so edit as you wish. When you have multiple issues happen, like multiple surgeries, multiple people going to the emergency room when they could have just waited till tomorrow and gone to their primary care, you have this overage of what was covered, okay? So this third-party insurer says, the district has to cover X and we'll cover Y of whatever that overage is. But all of the X's start adding up, which is how we get into the situation of these projected costs going higher and higher and higher. Ultimately, like, so one question you might ask, is we're spending a lot of time on insurance here, but it is the Achilles heel for us right now. Ultimately, you may ask, like, well, why don't we just go back to TRS and we don't have to worry about these overages? The problem is, as a district, we got out in 2022 out of TRS, and the law says you have to stay out for 5 years. And so year 5 for us isn't until 2027. And so at a minimum, we have to stay self-funded for at least 1 more year before we can think of going back to something where we don't have to worry about a system like I just described. Anything I'm missing in how I described it?
Just a, thing of, well, man, how does TRS Active Care do it? Well, it's with the government subsidy. The state kicks in a bunch of money into it, and that's how the subsidy works, because they've got two buckets that they come in with. One is basically $400 million, and then at the last legislative session, they kicked in another $369 million. Well, on a per employee basis, that's almost like $240 a month coming from the state toward the contribution. So that's how it works. So that's the backdrop there.
So since we're self-insured, essentially, isn't there a way to reinsure ourselves to protect against overages?
We do have, so here's the deal. Let's say there was a situation where Amanda, catastrophic, had $1 million of cost, okay? We self-insure. Let's argue that
You're beginning to see the problem.
You didn't know it. Okay, so $1 million. We're on the hook. We self-insure for the first $325,000. Okay, then we do have an excess carrier.
Per event.
Yeah. And so there's 325 there. Okay. Beyond that 325 per person, it's not our problem. It's if Devin is the excess carrier on that. It goes to him. Okay. We also have an aggregate carrier that if in total, if this was the expectation of the claims and we could buy overage coverage, we've got a $2 million coverage. That for the next $2 million, we have coverage. And then above that $2 million, then it's back to being on us, okay? So literally, to your point here, in terms of for this year, right here, since we changed carriers, and the short story is the 6.3 million is even after the expectation that we get $2 million back from the aggregate carrier and another $1.5 million back from the specific loss carrier. So this is netting $3.5 million of that back to us, okay? Now, one thing just to know about insurance, because on the one hand, it's like, well, obviously for this year, it's like, well, man, thank God we did that because, that saved us $3.5 million, and in this year it did. But what's the truth? If I'm that carrier and you just cost me $3.5 million, guess what your rate's going to be next year? It's going to be higher. And so there's no free lunch and time. You're gonna pay for it. But that's specific to our reality right now. We haven't got what our rates are going to be, for the excess carriers and stuff like that for next year. But we've got embedded in this cost for next year, they're assuming a 10% increase year over year in terms of what our cost is for this year. So that's the math in that. And so if we net out this, if next levels becomes prophetic and they actually save us this, our cost that we've got to cover is $17.2 million. We're currently, between the employee's paycheck and the district's contribution, we're only funding $12.6 million. So we've got a $4.5 million problem, okay? So then it becomes, all right, how are we going to pay for the $4.5 million is the question. And so it goes like this. As Dr. Padaville said, first up, if you just do the math, we've got 1,531 employees on medical. Over 12 months, if we increased our contribution from $450 to $600, the $150 a month increase, that's the source of $2.8 million, okay? To be clear, if I'm recruiting, I say, hey, look what we're doing for you as an employee benefit. That's 600 times 12, that's a $7,200, gift of the district toward the employee to help with the medical insurance. So it's a huge contribution from the district. The next piece would be increasing the employee-only premium by $40 a month or $480 a year. That would bring in another $587,000. Then if we did the employee plus dependent, any employee that was covering not only themselves but dependents, that increase would be $9 a month. That would bring in $331. Then if in addition to the 2.8 the district's kicking in here, it would also assume that we put another $900,000 off of the fund balance. Remember, we're moving 12 million over. We're going to use 10 here. We're going to use another million here. And then collectively, those four adds get us the money that we need to cover the expected increase that's needed. Okay.
So over the next couple months or weeks, we're going to be talking with our insurers about what do all these rates look like, what is the contribution. So these dials are going to move back and forth just a little bit. The reason we're leading with this is as we talk about different compensation options, you're going to see that X would result in a deficit, X would result in a deficit. You may be asking, like, how is it a deficit? We had a balanced budget last year. The reason why is that is factoring into it now. Like that is that 2 points. Like if you just took off that 2.7, we have a surplus in going into next year. But this is the situation we're in as we look about like how do we not have a continual hole in medical expenses? Because at some point it's going to hurt our fund balance. Well, it's already hurting our fund balance. At some point it'll be a dangerously low fund balance.
Okay, quick question. Where's the extra $2 million from the one-time property audit after we get out of the top payment? The one-time property audit is $12 million, yes?
Right.
We're using $10 million up top, yes?
Yeah. 10 million here, another million here, there'd be $1 million left over. This last, like, use of fund balance on this line. So
That's $900,000.
right.
But we have $2 million left from the original one-time property audit, right?
Well, if we just round this to 10, and this is $1 million here, so call it 11. Okay.
Okay. So you're saying there's one, not two.
If I move $12 million over into this bank account, I use 10, and I use another 900,000, I'd still have $1 million left in the medical fund bank account.
It would essentially create a cushion
So
for
we just have
the
to reserve
overages
those?
next year to buy us this runway.
But we'd be eligible to go back to TRS that following year, right? If we so chose to.
Right.
If we so chose.
Anthony, did you have anything?
No.
So that 2.7 for district contribution increase, am I catching that is the way the district is choosing to add more so that employees, so we're going to absorb that cost, so employees aren't absorbing additional costs.
Right.
Is that accurate?
Right.
Okay.
And then just for clarification, they're still Blue Cross Blue Shield, but we're saying they're going to a certain location, and that's what next level is.
Yeah. The next level and Blue Cross Blue Shield are separate entities.
Yeah, they're separate entities.
Right.
So,
And so, next level is a to be determined where that actual location is. They're going to come to us sooner rather than later with where those proposed sites are. And once they identify that site and we agree to it, then that site would be open 7 days a week from 9 in the morning until 9 at night.
Hopefully, people will use those services rather than having a medical cost at the ER, which would reduce, it would be a cost.
It's really any medical visit. I mean, they can, and Kenneth mentioned this earlier, but our employees can literally, they told us that unless you, all of a sudden, they come across like a heart problem, right? They're gonna send you to a very specific specialist for that. Other than that, they can cover everything medical. So kind of in layman's terms, James, you asked a second ago about kind of the overages and things like that. I think if you think about your car insurance, right, every time you get in an accident, your premiums go up. Every time an employee goes to the doctor and we pay, let's say you're out of pocket $250, but the Blue Cross Blue Shield gets hit $2,500, right? Our premiums every year are based on how many accidents you get into. Right, so our stop loss coverage is $325,000. If we have 3 catastrophic events happen and we pay $325,000 for only 3, it's almost $1 million, right? We're not taking in that much money from our current premiums that we're asking employees to pay on top of our contribution to the district. It's money in, money out, right? You can't spend more than you make, and that's currently what's happening. So if we could get our employees to understand the significance of going to next level, Blue Cross Blue Shield never gets hit. So it's like you're having no accidents, right? So when they look at your premiums every year, it's possible that we could even flatline, or at some point, even if we decide our plan did well enough and we didn't have to go to TRS, our premiums could potentially go down. I mean, that would be a miracle, but I mean, it's possible. I mean, we continue to see inflation, right? But we wouldn't see the significant increases that we do, but that's an education part that we'll be responsible for in bringing on next level. We'll have to get in front of our employees.
So I'd like to ask maybe an edge case scenario about employees who have dependents or themselves with chronic medical conditions. Next level care, you're saying that they will be providing primary care as well as specialty care for those maybe with diabetes or
Yes.
high blood pressure.
Yes.
So how does that work if they do need to go see a specialist at MD Anderson Cancer Center because they just have new cancer diagnosis?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, but for families that have ongoing primary care needs or specialist needs, we wouldn't necessarily be trying to persuade employees from leaving that. But we're talking about, like, I think I need to see the emergency room. I have a horrible sinus infection. I woke up in the middle of the night. I feel terrible. Like, we want the first go-to to be like this third party that we're going to potentially partner with, and we're not the only district that is standing up essentially high-level urgent cares like this as a way to kind of stop the insurance bleed right here.
They have access to MRIs, CAT scans, things like that hit our plan quite a bit, right? I mean, people get those quite often, and it would literally cost our plan nothing, or the employee. Employee's not going to pay anything either.
And I imagine there would be like a pretty lengthy education process for,
There's going to have to be.
because the general public typically doesn't understand when to go to the ER versus going to their
That's
primary
right.
care. So
That's right.
I think that's just an initial concern of, implementation, which, to navigate.
And the next level would only be open to our district staff, it's not open to.
No, it's open to the public as well, but for us, it's $30 per covered employee.
So is their business model essentially land a large district, use that as their base to fund their
Yeah,
facility? and
they're
then
talking not
that-
only with us, but also like with the city and the county of
And then
Georgetown.
hope to drive their
With-
profit from somewhere else?
There's
Yeah, I'll
all-
tell you, I went into
Because
next
at
level.
30
not-
bucks a person, this is not a sustainable business model.
No, it's not, and that's each month, right? So over time,
It doesn't
but it
get-
still doesn't pay for
$306
everything.
a year per person.
Right.
They
I'll
don't
tell you, I
pay
walked
for
into next level in the fall to take my son, ended up with the flu, cost me $190, right? Because Blue Cross Blue Shield. So when they showed up, I was like, oh, that's where I took my son, and I paid $190, right? I also have a bill now that I just got from them that's close to $500, right? And so once all that worked itself out with our current, and I'm sharing that personal story to tell you the cost that the person off the street pays, and then if it hits our plan, now I'm out an additional several $100s to make up for what would have cost me nothing.
And there are concierge subscription-based medical models where people will pay a provider for all inclusives up to this amount. So I think applying it to this is kind of interesting, actually.
And like the individual off the street, and I don't know the specifics, I just know from my contact at Next Level, they don't get the $30 a month. They're gonna pay, if it was just an individual, like I don't work for the district, I want this, they're gonna charge me more than that.
What,
Go ahead.
what do our employees currently pay for their premiums?
So an employee only right now, I don't have the other three memorized.
That's fine, I don't care.
But an employee only pays about $85, $86 rounded, and we contribute $450.
And what will that shift to with all of this?
It's another 40 on their side,
85 plus 40.
and then 100, and so add 190 between them and us.
I pay around 5 something right now for just me and my child, and so mine would go up 90.
All right, trustees, we can come back to this specific topic, but on a related note, we're going to talk about what impact does this have on what we could possibly consider for compensation.
Right, that's exactly what I was thinking about sitting here. Okay, great.
All right, awesome. So I get to roll right into after this great conversation. Deficit and health insurance, into 4 different scenarios that we'll go through. Around the topic of budget, and we've talked a couple of times about a Vader and what that would look like if you all were to choose to call for that. And so we've got that written into each of the scenarios so that you can see what the deficit would be and then know what that would look like if we were to call for one and it were to pass. So budget scenario A, which would go into effect in July, cost the district nothing, right? We literally would do no teacher step increase, no hourly pay increase, no administrative pay increase. So teacher starting pay would still remain at $57,000, and so that's pretty cut and dry. Probably don't have too many questions about that, and stop me along the way if you do. Happy to get into details.
Which for some folks would be effectively a $40
Correct.
decrease.
That's right. Yeah. So budget scenario B would go into effect in July. The cost would be $725,000. That would leave us with a deficit without the VATRE of $1.8 million. So this would include a teacher step increase only of $350,000. I want to pause for just a second and just talk about our teacher step increase and the impact if we were to choose scenario A and we did not do a teacher step increase. So last year when the state passed the TRA, right? So
TRA is?
Teacher retention allowance. Yep, thank you, Devin. Sorry, so many. So when they passed that, teachers in year 1 and 2 got nothing, right? So Georgetown elected to add an additional 1,000. So this year, when those teachers roll from step 2 to 3, they will increment, no matter what we do, they will increment $1,500 because they get the $2,500 for step 2 and 3. That means that those that roll from 3 to 4, from 4 to 5 will increment $2,500 because they started with the $2,500. Now they get the $5,000. So no matter what, those teachers will get that incremental increase that has nothing to do with what we do or don't do. Know that if we choose to freeze the teacher pay scale, those that roll from 2 to 3, so now I'm on year 3, I roll from 3 to 4, year 3 and 4, they're making the exact same money. Okay, same thing with 5 to 6. Okay?
So it's almost like because of the system the state has created, if a school district does not do a step increase, it essentially freezes the pay increase that the state intended. Is that the accurate way of saying it?
Yeah, so they'll get the TRA regardless, right? But it does put us in a situation where those steps will be making the same amount of money, right? And could create some complications in the teacher pay scale later down the road if for some reason the VATRE did not pass and we had to stay with that over the course of the year. So just wanted you to have that information when you're thinking about options for the teacher step increase.
Can I make sure I understand? So a teacher right now may be working with an assumption because I'm in year 3, and these numbers may not be the right for the scenario, but I should get this next amount because of the TRA, but the district has to activate that somehow.
That's right.
And if we don't press the activate button, that teacher could stay frozen in that current level.
Well, the teacher's going to get the TRA regardless. Okay, so I'm just gonna throw out numbers, because I don't have the whole teacher pay scale memorized, but let's say I'm currently in year 2 and I'm making, let's just say 60, okay? When I increment up to year 3, because we've already infused 1,000, I'm gonna now make 61.5, because I get that additional 15. They get that no matter what. So if I was on year 3 last year, I'm currently making the same amount of money that when that 3 goes to 4, so year 3 and 4 will make the same amount of money. Does that make sense? If you freeze the pay scale.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then
so
same thing
to
for
answer your
finances.
question, Ms. Gardo, I think most people assume that the pay scale that says step 1, step 2 automatically goes up, but it's actually approved by the board when the board approves the budget. So if the board does not approve a step increase, or if we don't recommend it, then you're frozen at step 3 until down the road whenever it's approved.
Okay, so the next item there is critical pay adjustments, totals about 90,000 of that 725. That includes a handful of employees who either are currently, based on TASB's recommendation, they're about 85% below market, and so we're getting them up to 90, and so that includes that group of people. There's a handful of those that exist. Okay.
Total of 90K.
Total of 90K. Transportation pay scale adjustment is about 100,000, and I'll get into the details of that because that's a lot of money when you think about how is that $100,000. So there's 2 things at play here. Back a few years ago, you'll remember we took our min, mid, and max, which is our typical pay scale, and we started doing just $1 raise. So when you started out as a bus driver, you started out $22 an hour, 23, 24, 25. It went up about 7 years, so every year you got $1 raise. When our bus drivers now cap out at that 7th year, and we do a 1% raise, let's just say that the mid range for that 22, 23, all the way to 27 is 25. If we do a 1%, they may get a 25-cent raise. So it's made the pay increase for them a little wonky. Like, it started out as a really great thing. We modeled that off of another district who has since then also dissolved that plan because it just, short term it was good, long term it's not. So we're recommending that we go back to a normal pay scale so that we can, and then also increasing minimum to go up $23, because with that 22 that we started, we're now behind market. And so we're recommending that we get even again with market, which is minimum pay of 23. The other piece, so that's the first part. The second part is currently our bus drivers, when you look at our compensation plan, are guaranteed 5 hours of drive time. Surrounding districts, there's no other district that advertises just minimum of 5 hours. So while most of our drivers drive more than 5, when they look at our compensation plan, they're like, oh, I'm only guaranteed 5 hours, right? So, but surrounding neighboring districts will show anywhere from a guaranteed 6 to 8. So I'm gonna go where the money's guaranteed. So there's 2 things. It's a recruitment problem, and then it's also, we're not working that money into our budget because we're calculating our number of employees at 5 hours, but they're driving more than that. So that's money that we're paying, but it's not embedded in the budget, right? So that's really, it's a cost of 100. So besides the first part, the second part is really just getting us to a place where we're planning for that money and being competitive with pay. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, our substitute pay for teacher, counselor, and nurses is well behind market. Currently, our daily rate for a short-term sub is $115. The average right now in the area is $130. So we're recommending that go up to $125. The long-term sub pay average is currently $152 across the district, or across the area. We currently pay $135, so we're recommending that we go up to $150 on that. We have our nurses currently, we really struggle to get sub nurses. That current rate is $170 a day. We're asking for that to go up and recommending that go up to $225. We have a neighboring district that pays $296. So it's like I mean, I'm sure they're going to a neighbor to work from 170 to 296. We really, really struggle. Mindy does a really good job trying to keep nurses on our campuses, but we really struggle in that area, and we think a lot of it has to do with our pay. And then counselors are the same. We're recommending that go from 200 to 250. And that's all based on market comparisons in the area. Okay, then after that, there's no compensation increase for any other area. So this is just what we feel like is bare minimum recommendation and things that need to happen, and then starting pay in this particular scenario would remain at 57. All right, budget scenario C is, again, would be effective July 1st. The cost for this runs about $2.18 million. The deficit without the Vader would be 3.25. So that would be scenario B. So all the things that I just talked about, transportation, sub-pay, all of those things embedded in that. This would include a 1% increase for teachers and hourly employees. So you're talking our teachers and then our 3, 4, and 5 pay grade groups and our compensation plan. Pay grades 1 and 2, which include all of our district administrators, campus administrators, would not receive anything in this recommendation. We would include market adjustments in this, and that equals about $500,000.
Can you go back to clarify, what did you say about administration principals?
Nothing. This does not include anything for those pay groups in 1 and 2, those employees in 1 and 2.
When was the last time their compensation was evaluated for market?
We do it every year. Yeah. We do a TASB market review every year. We start working with them in January and start getting back the information in March to start preparing this. All right, last but not least is budget scenario D. If all things were great in the world and we didn't have budget issues, this is what we would be bringing to you. Just based on where we want to be within the market for not just our teachers, but also all other staff. So I'm going to talk about teachers for just a second with our 3% recommendation. So I'm going to back up just a little bit because I want to talk about teacher pay scale over the last couple of years and what you all have done to help support an increase in our teacher minimum. So 2 years ago, back in 23-24, our starting teacher salary was $54,450, and currently, yeah, it's $25.50 more this year at $57K. What that has done for us, and we talked about this in a few board workshops, it's been a bit, but so just a reminder, what that has done is put us, we're competitive in years 0 through basically 9. Right? Starting with our veteran teachers, and that's kind of been a goal. We talked about what can we do to infuse additional money to our veteran teachers. And so we're right at market, a little bit above market with our current 0 through 10. When we start to get above 10 years, we are slightly below market. So this particular recommendation for teachers would take our starting pay, you can see the $58,500. That means that each teacher would get a minimum of $2,000, with our veteran teachers starting in year 10 getting anywhere from $2,100 to $2,500 with this particular recommendation. And that would put us at roughly 103%, so about slightly above market with our veteran teachers. 2% for all other staff and recommended market adjustments, that's just, 2% for every other pay grade. Just so that you know, if you were to choose to do scenario C, okay, where we did 1%, and we said we'd like to come back and do scenario D if the Vader passes, you got to take the 1% for teachers and say, well, they're going to get a 3% total, so once Vader passes, they get 2% more, right? So the math gets a little complicated on that, and we don't have to get into all that, but just if we were to choose to do that, and that were the recommendation we would go with, that would change some things in November if the Vader were to pass in terms of how we would pay out people. The other thing is that we talked about is on any of the recommendations for, let's say that you went with any of the other recommendations and then passing of the Vader in November means that the approval for this would happen, we would retroactively pay our employees back to July as if all things were good in the world right now and you approved this one here.
Mr. Lancaster, do you have a question?
No, I'm just calculating how many months that would be. It was 4.
Yeah. The reality is it would take our teams a couple of months to retroactively pay every employee, calculate what that's gonna look like, especially if we went with city.
Dev caught me counting.
Do what?
Dev caught me counting on my fingers.
Yeah.
I thought you were raising your hand.
I know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So, I mean, ultimately, if we look at this, even if we didn't have medical expenses, we're in a place as a district where this would not be sustainable for us. This would result in a budget deficit without additional revenue coming to the school district. And the only way for that revenue to be part of the school district is if this board considers in August a tax ratification election. So this is not something that we can currently recommend like today. It could be something we recommend as a budget amendment upon a successful election. One of the things that Amanda helped articulate is that piece about a teacher step increase gets really complicated if that's something that we don't consider as a recommendation. So that's one of those kind of critical pieces that it has ripple effects if we don't do that piece. So a little bit about our just background on the tax ratification election. We currently have the lowest tax rate in Williamson County, and I appreciate the work our financial advisor and Kenneth are doing, but we project that we can maintain the lowest tax rate in Williamson County, even if we were to go to the community with an election proposition. Increasing the tax rate does require an election. There's no way to increase the tax rate at all without asking the people to vote for it. And then lastly, if past results would increase in annual revenue each year, but recapture also increases, so that is part of the equation as well. I'm going to hand it over. Well, I'm going to pause there. We went through a lot of information. I'm sure you have questions. Trustees, what questions do you have for Amanda, Kenneth, or I?
Back in 2022, when we were doing insurance through the state, I was not on the board yet. Do you have just a roundabout idea how much a family was paying in insurance, like monthly or contribution?
A lot less.
I'll let you know. I can pull one check and tell you that.
Yeah. I do know that in our contribution, the district contribution in 23 and 24 was 422. Prior to that, so that's the last 2 years, right? This year we're doing 450. Prior to that, it was 378 and went back as far as what.
That was the
Fine.
district contribution under state. Okay. But I was just curious what a teacher's contribution was.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could
That's
get that for you.
It's not critical. I'm just trying to draw, because like I said, I wasn't on the board yet, so I'm just trying to really get a good understanding of what these numbers could mean to a family that's budgeting
Right.
and what they could mean if we don't increase pay and then increase what they're required to pay in health insurance.
I appreciate all the scenarios that we can look at, and I think like that board budget priority slide, I think Dr. Padwell, you mentioned these things are in tension with one another, and I feel like these scenarios are trying to give us pathways to still accomplish these. It just is not as straightforward as perhaps what it looked like last year. So I think like each scenario, we probably would all prefer something that's a little bit simpler, but that's just not the context that we're in. So the things that y'all baked up here for us to look at, I think, give us a rigorous pathway. I think with the scenario P, we're still getting to, it seems like, signal something strong and positive to our teachers with that step increase and with the other adjustments that you outlined here. While projecting out, if we were to pursue the ATRE, you know, more possible benefits to teachers, to administrative staff. So I think the hope would be we get to do B plus D, depending on what we do. But I think B gives us like a rigorous look at what we could try to accomplish, and I appreciate y'all putting together kind of these scenarios for us to look at this by line item.
And Kenneth, you may cover this in a second if you're gonna get into that, but since we've reached that end of April mark, and you had brought up some of the, you know, talked to like 2 of us at a time, that it would depend on how property taxes came in, whether it would just kind of be neutral, like we're not raising property taxes, it would be neutral. Did those numbers come in where you thought they were?
Yeah, I literally haven't got them yet. They were due on the 30th, but I haven't got them yet, so. Not going here.
For scenario B, the critical pay adjustments item, does that, and then on the next page, we have like hourly employees. What are critical, can you give me an example of people that would benefit from critical pay adjustments?
So larger groups would include our mechanics and transportation. Our electricians are another larger group. We do have some specific employees that fall within that, need to be adjusted to a different pay grade, so I don't want to get specific because it's easy to pinpoint.
Maybe define it by the percentage of how far below they are everybody else, because that wasn't true, that, right? They were-
Yeah, if they fell below the 90% and around the 85%, we were pushing to get them. We didn't really have too many that fell below 85%, but if they did, we were pushing, trying to get them to at least 90% of market.
If they were within 90%, it wasn't even a conversation.
Right.
But if they were so below the market, like 85 and lower, it was a consideration that got brought up.
It seems like a good way to take care of people.
I have a question on the medical insurance fund slide. I don't know if you can pull that one back up. I just want to. So, in this middle block here, if we were to go this route and use next level, this estimated medical cost underneath that, the 17 million, is this number fixed in any way? In other words, if we use next level, and for whatever reason, creature of habit, people don't buy into the system or what have you, they just go to their regular doctor anyway, right? And we're going to the doctor with catastrophic events, and they're not using next level. Could that number balloon?
Yeah, I mean, if literally next level accomplished nothing, this number would go up, it would be 18.4 million, because it would be like, this is the expected benefit, net benefit of next level. If that didn't materialize, and literally, hey, nobody went, we got no benefit, they would refund us the 700,000 we paid them, but that was already netted out of this.
Okay.
So our cost would be back to the 18.4.
So it could go up 1, but that's it. It wouldn't go beyond that 18 million.
Well, you gotta remember, we're self-funded. So whatever our cost is our cost. So literally 1,500 employees, if everyone had a catastrophic thing where $300,000 claims, you just start multiplying 300,000 times the number of people that have that. And so that's the deal. When you like for us, kind of give it this way. If we were truly self-funded, we've got 1,500 people. Whatever happens to them, every time they go to the doctor, emergency, anything like that, the fund pays that expense, whatever it is. Okay, if we were 100% self-funded, that would be our reality. So if nobody went, it cost us nothing. District put in money, we took money from the employee's paycheck, and we'd have won big that year. Okay, if literally we didn't incur any cost. But when you're self-funded, your expenses, whatever people's medical bills are in total. Okay, your only source of revenue is out of the employee's paycheck and out of the district's contribution. So if expenses are higher, like for us, they're higher than what we've kicked in, we lose money. If we take in the same, we break even. If it's more, that's to the good. Okay. That's under the scenario we're fully self-insured. We're not fully self-insured because we hire out to 2 insurance companies. One for a specific, if one person has a high medical claim, we buy insurance above $325,000. So this claim could have been $1 million. we're only gonna pay the first 325, and the carrier is gonna pay from 325 to $1 million. Okay, so that's one piece of insurance that we're buying, and that's called specific stop loss coverage is the actual term. And we've also got aggregate coverage that as everybody that we insure, we're assuming that cost is here. Okay, we've got aggregate coverage that says from whatever we thought it would, whatever we buy that insurance level at,
Yes.
for the next $2 million, that company is on the hook.
The next how much?
Is up to $2 million above a set dollar amount. So they pay up to that next $2 million.
Okay.
Beyond that $2 million, then we're on the hook again.
Huh, okay.
Okay, so that's how we're structured right now.
So it could balloon, that's why
Yeah.
everybody would need to know about this process.
Right,
And we need help.
yeah, you read my mind. Okay, thank you, that's very helpful.
All right, go ahead, Ken.
Hey, can we take 5 minutes before we jump into the next?
Yeah. We're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you. Thank you.
Numbers swirling people's heads. All right, Kenneth, I got them eating, so if you talk fast, you might not get a lot of questions.
Give them some dessert too. All right, I'm gonna start you, like these numbers, a lot of them haven't changed since our last meeting, but I'm gonna start you with the kind of the forecast. In total, $170 million for this year, and really the message to it is we're projected to have a balanced budget before the medical discussion kind of thing. And how we're gonna pay for the medical we talked about is on line 39, we're getting $12.4 million from the property value audit. We sold land for $1.3 million, $1 million from the E-rate, and so the plan is to transfer 12 million of those funds over to medical. That would still leave 2.2 million to be added to the fund balance of the general fund and take it from a starting balance of 36.8 million to be 39.1 million, which is roughly 25% fund balance as a percent of ongoing operating expenses. So that's our forecast. In terms of some of the highlights on the expense side, this assumes a Vader. It also assumes, in terms of growth, 150 ADA next year, the following year, and then another 300 kids after that. That we don't open any schools this next year, so that's embedded in the plan. A Vader is embedded in here, so that collectively, this $26 million increase, about 7.4 million of that is from the Vader assumption, like assuming currently 8 copper pennies. We're not going to net and stick in our pocket 26 million because 15 million will get recaptured. So here's on the expense side. We talked about scenario D. That's the $4.7 million that's embedded in here. The medical, the 2.75 is in there. Then there's the teacher incentive allotment that we have on the revenue side, and then on the expense side when it's paid out to teachers. And so that's really the main change year over year on the expense side. And so when you get to the bottom line to it, we'd still be to the good if the Vader passed. We'd have a bottom line of $1.5 million. In the following years, the growth assumption of the 150 and the 300, this forecast assumes that we open elementary 12, middle school 5 in 27-28, and the high school the following year is a 9th grade center. And on the expense side, the assumption is, hey, the legislature is meeting in 27-28. We don't know what they'll do. We have embedded an historical assumption that they would do what they've done in the past, which is an average of like 1.7%. So that's in there on the revenue side. And so we don't have a pay raise in those two scenarios. We're going to kind of plan to live the experience first. Next year at this point, we'll be talking about, okay, what is the amount of revenue? What are we going to do on the expense side? But we could get home with this game plan of not a of opening the schools on this track, not doing a pay raise, putting money aside for additional medical costs, and still be able to balance out on those years. So that's really the message on the general fund side. I'm also going to share with you the debt service and the food service update on that. And so the board has previously approved to do a refunding this fiscal year. And the reason for that is with the last legislative session, if we take in more money than what we have to pay out in debt, the state, in essence, like just takes that funding back. An important thing here, and I've noted it here, is our fiscal year is June 30. In terms of how the state does their mindset of like money coming in and money coming out is their fiscal year, which is September 1 to August 31. So we're forecasted to take in $88 million between our property tax on the INS side and what the state is contributing mainly for the whole harmless when they raise the homestead exemption. The debt service that we're planning to pay, like that we're scheduled to pay in our fiscal year is only $76 million, but we have a debt payment, if you view it on how the state is viewing it, we're going to be paying $80 million through their fiscal year. The plan is to do a bank placement for the other $8 million, which would give us $88 million of debt payment within the time frame that the state is measuring. So hey, we're taking in 88, we're paying out 88.5. We get to keep everything the state is giving us. So that's the plan there. In terms of next year's budget, I've run numbers based on the initial estimated property value. So this amount of revenue comes from what the county, like Williamson County, projected taxable value is going up by. And then with the assumption that we'd lower the INS rate by 4 pennies, we would take in that amount of revenue with this assumed amount of state revenue. So we'd be at 81 million with a scheduled debt payment. And so we'd be fine. We could cover it and not have to give any money back to the state. We've got a healthy fund balance on the debt service side. When we closed the books last year, on June 30, we had over 60 million. We have about a $40 million payment that's made in August. So we've got to have enough fund balance to cover that, but we do. And so it's okay, in my mind, to, even if we needed to use a little bit of that fund balance, we have more than enough to cover that and put it to use. On the food service side, I put in the board update last week, and I shared with the board previously that the plan is to raise meal prices for next year. This doesn't have any impact on the free and reduced students because they will continue to currently and will continue to eat for free. The plan is to increase breakfast rates by a dime and lunch rates by 50 cents. The expectation of that is that that will give us $250,000 of additional revenue that can be used to pay toward the food services shared operating costs, basically for the utility bills, all that kind of thing. In plain English, what's currently going on, and like literally for the year we're living, food service in shared operating costs, they incur $1.1 million of cost. This year we're only going to get from them $300,000 of that $1.8 million. So it's literally the general fund is subsidizing food service this year by $800,000. Well, we just talked about how short we are on the general fund side. So the intent is to next year and in the next couple of years get us to where the food service pays its fair cost of the shared operating cost. So the first step in that is raising the meal prices next year. That will allow us to increase the contribution to $500,000 next year from the $300,000 that was in it for this year. Okay?
Kenneth, I know these are big numbers. Do you have a daily impact or like a weekly or monthly impact on what raising those numbers might look like to families that are paying?
Well, something that's, before Kenneth answers, I can't recall if he said this. For the child on free or reduced lunch, there is no impact.
Okay.
But for children that are not on free or reduced lunch, yes, it
Yeah, so for every, like,
compounds.
50 cents times 5 is $2.50 a week.
Okay, thank you.
And Kenneth, are we thinking that we would need to raise meal prices every year moving forward to maintain whatever we're trying to maintain here?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of multiple things at play where it's not just 1 + 1 = 2 kind of thing, because the other thing that goes on with this, you can see, over half of our revenue comes from the federal side. So all the kids that are on free and reduced lunch, we're getting money in from we don't get it from the child, we're getting it from the federal government and or the state government here. And so that money is based on what their reimbursable rate is, and they adjust that each year. So it depends on how much does that amount go up. Does that go up 4%, 5%, whatever, because that will affect that number. Also, just how many kids eat, is another variable. So I can't give you a literal, hey, yes, next year it's got to be whatever. But I just know that I'm just kind of using and hey, if the board disagrees, y'all are going to be the ones to ultimately set the rates and all that kind of thing. But what I'm, using as an approach is simply, I want, hey, regardless of the entity, I'm just trying to sort of be fair across everything. And on the food service, since it's critical for us to have enough money on the general fund side, so our main thing is to educate the kids. Well, if we're taking $800,000 out of the classroom.
Yeah, long story short, it depends, but the ultimate goal is we stay in the black between what we're bringing in and what the expenses are. Otherwise, we're using the same pot of money that's paying teachers to cover our debt on the food service side.
I have a question. The federal revenues for food service, is that multiple federal programs, or is that typically like one federal,
Yeah, I mean, this is specific to the federal government and the reimbursement. They do all of the reimbursement on the federal side. So free, that's all coming from the federal. On the state side, what they're kicking in is normally on the reduced, the child would have to pay 30 cents or something like that. Well, the state makes up whatever the child would have had to pay, that reduced amount, the state is paying that. So that's how they both eat free, even though it's called reduced. Well, how can a reduced be free? It's because the state is making up that portion. All right, then the final piece, this is a slide y'all have seen before that simply shows right now what the total M&O rate is and the INS rate. And like Dr. Hadwell said, we're the lowest of any of our surrounding districts at $1.05. What I'm working on, and as I have more information, and hopefully by the time of the next board meeting, the next board workshop, we'll be able to know, are we in fact able to basically keep this rate the same, even with doing a Vader? Because we've already shown that we can expect to lower the INS rate by 4 cents. If we can do 4 cents or maybe even 5 cents, depending on what the ultimate numbers are, we could do that and say, hey, taxpayer, we're keeping your rate flat, even though if you go to the Vader, we have $7 billion more that we can put into the classroom. Question? Thank you.
All right, up on the screen you have some dates coming up that, and thank you to our trustees for participating in some of those dates as well. Certainly community members and staff might have questions, and these are opportunities to have more intimate conversations. All right, we're going to take an abrupt left turn and talk about aspiring board goals. So these were the top 6 points in our board workshop that you brought up. And so one of the steps we're going to have as a school district is we're going to lead our district leadership team through an activity to really align this idea of aspiring board goals to our strategic blueprint, and specifically the strategic objectives in our strategic blueprint. We just really want to make sure there's that alignment. Now, to a lot of people, even when, sometimes when I was an administrator, before I came to the dark side of central office, there were times I thought, what does it matter about a strategic plan? Like, what impact does that have on anything? But I think we all have this lived experience of, if the strategic blueprint has measurable objectives that the board holds us accountable to, then that is where our attention goes as a senior leadership team. If that's where our attention goes, then by proxy, that's where principal attention goes, because they're being asked to provide evidence of outcomes that align to strategic objectives, that align to board goals. And then by proxy, that impacts the experience teachers and kids have in the classroom. So getting aligned there is really important for us. So the first activity we're going to go through here is I'm going to ask you to be in pairs. And so Ms. Malden, Mr. Blankenship, if you'll be a pair, Stacy and James, if you're a pair, and then Rachel and Laura, if you're a pair. So the first thing I want us to just take a stab at, spending a few minutes here, is of these statements, could you craft a first draft of what you think a vision statement would be? So if we had this idea of, by 2030, we want to be this school district, what would an overall statement that encompasses these 6 statements look like for you? So I'm going to just give you like 5 minutes, work together, and then we'll do a little bit of sharing.
Bullet points like that.
What's a mission statement supposed to be? You say vision or mission statement?
Vision.
Vision.
What if we're around the corner, or think of something around the corner, what do we want it to look like?
Yeah, I think we're trying to just basically be with each other. I'm happy to be a simple one, so that
Students.
Oh, you did?
All GIS students.
That's what James needs it, well, my handwriting.
I hate this whole portion of the exercise. Why? Because my brain thinks like this, bullet points.
Bullet points?
Check, 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 not in flowy sentences.
Well, I add empowering students through their academic rigor or excellence by building community and confidence to improve the future. And I have a line here, this could be our future or the future for generations. I don't know if that's what we're.
That's great. That's great. No long answer.
Except for mine, where it is.
I just don't like no wrong answer.
Your paper, so.
So that already insinuates that every campus.
Oh, thank you.
So you basically write all this, and then you go right back, okay, what does that mean? Well, that means we have to accomplish this. Okay, so put a KPI to this. And give me a KPI, give me a metric that tells me I did
Yeah, you
this.
just kind of turn, you just turn these into.
Provide academic excellence, accompanied,
I think there's
Just
a
that
lot.
one liner.
there's some way to put these two together.
I think it kind of paints that picture, right? That's like, these emotions. Yeah, a lot of
Reach for their goal,
That's good.
Versus.
Academic across every campus, it's a fun slide.
you can talk
Right,
about
it's being very like, even though, once we break this down,
It means.
so I think that's,
Extracurricular programs.
you know, the question is, what does it
I think a simple phrase like
At the end of the day,
advanced opportunities encompasses CTE, a lot of honor stuff.
Rich variety of
so you just not.
They got them all. That's parents.
It's ranking at the time, I can't put them all together.
Students went to schools who provide academic excellence and a rich variety of advanced opportunities while maintaining competitive pay for the teaching staff.
Did you eat?
Yeah, I asked her that, he brought me down. Did you?
Like, you only have one that can go, and it's
Here, I typically
you
like.
just gotta get to here where they start blending colors.
I like to focus.
Stand up,
If I'm eating, I'm paying Kenneth more
Yeah,
attention.
and then we become like two colors.
Yeah,
Whatever the heck.
exactly. I had some chips and a sandwich the other day here. And
Well, in that case, then you don't wanna tweak it.
my chips were like, James, no chat GPT. No chat GPT.
This is not my strong point. Remember when I told you we all bring strengths to the board?
Yeah.
That also implies that we all bring weaknesses.
I'm sitting here with the writers, so we just.
I like to create opportunities for others to look good, Anthony.
This is your time to shine. Jen did all her writing.
Apparently it's the time over here.
Yeah, you could read my writing.
Like a doctor.
All right, let's, if you're not completely done, that's fine, but let's go ahead and do a little bit of sharing out. Jen, can we start with you? Do you
Sure.
mind sharing what you and Anthony drafted?
By 2030, all GISD students will attend schools who provide academic excellence and a variety of rich variety of advanced opportunities while maintaining competitive pay for the teaching staff.
See my edges.
Well done, well done, well done.
Someone talk to me. Where'd Kenneth go? I missed that guy.
All right, thank you. Do you have what you want to say? Go ahead.
By 2030, we will empower students through academic excellence while building community and confidence to improve our future.
Well, that was concise. Can we do that one more time?
Yeah. By 2030, we will empower students through academic excellence while building community and confidence to improve our future.
I like how you put it in vision.
I would love to take credit for that.
I like the confidence part.
I'm trying in my sense of belonging thing with the council board.
You work on it.
Well done.
All right, excellent. Ms. Kinsella.
All right, by 2030, Georgetown ISD will be the district families seek, educators choose, and students thrive in, defined by excellence in academics, deep student belonging, and opportunities that shape the future.
On the poster.
Ooh, yeah, that's great.
I'm changing groups.
Good job, guys.
Cheated on the wrong paper.
I'll be happy to provide more references and annotations for Jen.
Appreciate
Were there any parts of any of yours that really resonated with anyone here that just really grabbed you, or are there, in general, did you feel like each of those statements kind of hit home at what you were trying to accomplish here?
I like the confidence piece on theirs. What was that again? Would you read that piece?
Yeah, I said empower students through academic excellence by building community and confidence. So I was trying to tie into the sense of belonging piece there, and how she would word that would be through confidence. I'm confident in who you are.
And I like how you indicated, you acknowledged the family choice that is here and only coming more quickly by saying the students choose Georgetown, because they're gonna have to, families are gonna have to.
Well, we even talked about in the end putting the future of Georgetown, but we didn't want that to limit us because the future is for many of the students are beyond Georgetown.
That's true.
All right, next part of the activity, we'll gather those statements here. In this next part of the activity, you have different colors, but the colors don't really align to what I have here on the slide. So I'm gonna amend this just a little bit. If you'll take your yellow highlighter, or if you just, whatever color you have available to you, and in your packet, you have a copy of our strategic blueprint. So if you'll grab the strategic blueprint out of your board packet.
Oh, right here.
Okay, so in the second column, these are the strategic objectives, and when we adopted the blueprint 2 years ago, the objectives were actually the items that you approved as a board, and the rest of it is editable by the school district. So what I'm going to ask you to do with your partner here is, if you'll take that highlighter and highlight the objectives you feel clearly aligns to this vision statement you and your partner came up with. So it might be all of them, it might be none of them, it might be half of them. But the whole point of this activity is we're trying to get clarity on, does the board feel like this activity and the aspiring goals that you've helped create are aligned to what we currently have as strategic objectives?
We're talking this column, right, Devin? We're talking this column?
That second column, yep.
All the way down to here?
Yes,
Okay. But stops there.
that's right.
Okay.
Hold on, it's the very first column.
Yes.
Yeah, very first column.
The strategic objective.
That's right.
The instruction, assessment, and intervention are outlined and support for student learning and learning. So you got it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll work.
In GISD, we monitor progress towards students developing attributes in their
Yes.
and learn profile.
Not in our business there.
GISD monitors progress towards students developing attributes. I didn't say anything about.
You're supposed to be giving us the students in class for.
That's how we use to kind of measure. JS students are prepared for post-secondary education in the future.
That's it, absolutely.
For sure. Progress is reflected in a way that makes it easily understood to all audiences. Learner progress is reflected in a way that makes it understood to all audiences. Yeah,
We'll come back to that.
I'm going to say no. That's it.
We do all of them? Do we do this?
All the priority areas?
All the strategic objectives, that's right. Hold on.
GISD students are treated with respect.
Hold on, is this the same?
Others and adults.
I guess it
Valuable,
does.
but it's not
I
in
think
our.
it should change flat with me.
Because we provide academic excellence and a rich variety of advanced opportunities.
GISD employees find value in their.
But based on
This is weird, because I feel like a lot of these, in order to accomplish this, would naturally have to happen,
It would
but
have
they're
to
not specifically outlined here. Like,
But maybe that's somewhere else.
some of these have to happen for this to happen.
Yes, it is.
You know what I mean?
I don't know. I would feel opportunity like that.
Are there any objectives that come across yet that you're like?
Okay.
Yes.
Well, what do you think? GISD students are treated, oh, you already did that. You said no to 2.1, what about 2.2?
I don't know. Maybe it could fall, maybe it could fall
Oh,
under
you talking
there.
about respect?
No name that brothers just say.
Next, we don't have to,
it's, I don't think anything should.
Okay, I didn't select that. Georgetown ISD provides competitive compensation and benefits.
Well, there it is. There it is.
Georgetown ISD actively recruits, attracts, and retains employees with race, religious, social beliefs. Did talk anything about that? We did say, we did say competitive.
Embrace the vision, mission, and beliefs of the North. I think we should highlight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, make that one count. JSD professional learning communities thrive across the organization. You said Asian.
Yeah.
Transparent with reporting and progress, access to information. Remember the old days? That wasn't like, you can't be here what you want to be. There's a reason. I feel like you're trying to take that run. I want to do ASD staff inspectors.
Looky there, we're keeping up.
I feel like a lot of these are ones that we almost transcended the evenings.
Right.
By the way that all it is.
Okay, so you guys did your reporting on this next.
Oh, you're in the floor already? We are. Jen knows her way around a highlighter, she's quick with it. JSD staff and speaker trustee restaurants, yeah. See, it's one of those ones where I feel like we're now doing this exercise because we've already done this in real life.
Yeah, we don't have this going on, like,
And so it's like community members feel welcome to try and, it's up to you. All right. I appreciate you driving. I'm over here with the map, quest. Back in the day. I've done some travel.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
But the triptych,
she's in
Yeah. Yeah, so we need to do it.
Okay, then this is expected. Not, I shouldn't usually, yeah, it's I like that, that's part of it.
All right, trustees, I'm going to give you about 2 more minutes, but what I'm going to ask each of you to share is what is a strategic objective you were like, this really resonates with our aspiring board goals? And is there one that you were like, I'm not saying it should go away, but I question whether this is critical as it aligns to the aspiring board goals, okay? So what's one that's really strong? What's one that you're like, I don't know if this is as relevant?
Is it, are we supposed to respond to you?
Not yet. 2 more minutes.
Teachers.
That's good, yeah, that's what I'm gonna write that. You can report on this one, okay? Which one? 2.2, and then I'm gonna say this is well, oh, yeah. We have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
It starts at 5.
Yes.
Sorry.
Make all the work up, make sense. 0. All right, Ms. Kinchelo, let's start with you. What is one you feel, just between you and Ms. Gardo, what is one you feel is really strong as it aligns to the aspiring board goals, and what's one that you think, you know, I have some questions about this one?
Sure. So,
We were comparing 2.2 and we felt that one was duplicative of other items. Do you want to further explain?
Yeah, so I think all the ones in 4, so 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 seem strong and aligned.
Okay.
And we wondered, we agree with 3 point, which one is it? Sorry, we agree with 2.2 and wonder if there's a way that it's reflected in the 4s already or
Yeah.
can be included there.
So employees finding meaning and value in their work is really important,
Yeah.
but in the spirit of if everything's important, nothing's important, is this one of those that have to be front and center as a district focus?
Yeah, and it's kind of, I think, assumed in some of the 4 point.
And I think it too is like professional identity of the person. Like, we may not be able to shape if every individual finds value and meaning in their work, but we would hope that they have enough self-awareness to want to do their best and,
Sure.
you know, come in with that. It's kind of like not an expected
Intrinsic,
behavior, but like,
yeah.
is that something we can really impact if there are other things like pay and feeling like teachers belonged?
That's right. It's really good, thank you. Mr. Sheriff, Ms. McLaughlin, one that you feel is real strong, one you kind of question.
I think you throw the whole thing out and improve it all.
Say it again?
Throw the whole thing out and start over.
Okay.
No, I mean, we've accomplished so much seriously the last couple of years that when you look at these and knowing kind of what some of the long-term outcomes are, we're on the trajectory where those are becoming embedded in the system and inherent to the work we're doing. And without that, the aspirational stuff we're talking about, these 2030 goals, we couldn't even be having these conversations if a lot of these strategic objectives weren't becoming part of the system. So I think the problem for me is we're at a point where we have to say, is it still a strategic objective or is it part of the system? Because once it's part of the system, it's no longer a strategic objective. We've already achieved it and embedded that work into what you guys do every day. And I think the last 2 years, you guys have done a ton of that. I mean, when we're looking at things like the communication, the community piece, the, 90% of parents that, on the surveys or the staff retention numbers, some of those numbers we're exceeding, some of them are so close to being met that really should it still even be a strategic objective. And so not that there's not value, a ton of value in them, it's, I think the shift in my mindset and in our conversation is, are they still relevant to create this 2030 work? And I feel like some yes, but the majority no. And I know you just wanted one thing, but you get my whole.
No, that's good, that's helpful.
We've outlived it. It's like,
Yeah, well, you would have to be achieving all these things to get to those things.
That's
So
right.
that-
I think you probably heard us say something similar as you walked past, and I even wrote, like, we transcended a lot of these goals, and the reason that we're having workshops like this is because we've already embodied a lot of these goals. So like for 4.2, where we have school board trustees establish effective relationships with like parents and other key community leaders. I feel like we've done so much work and made so much progress as far as ingratiating ourselves with the community and earning the trust of the community and the staff, and we are pulling collectively on the same side of the road in a way that several years back, it was not. So
it was not a priority of the board.
Right, it was not a focused priority, and we put it in place and we've executed it. And so I had that exact thing. I feel like we transcended some of these, but we still. I like 1.1, which is the main focus: instruction, assessment, and intervention aligned with support around student learning and growth, which is always priority number one.
Yep.
I think the challenge becomes now defining, okay, that's strategic, we agree that's strategic value, absolutely, that objective is still relevant.
Yeah.
Does what the end of that mean?
Yeah,
Needs to be
exactly.
updated and changed to align,
Yeah.
and that's probably where the work on some of these things.
Yeah, like on that one, maybe in support of student learning and growth, maybe it embeds some of the language about academic excellence and advanced academics, like whatever that next level of that objective looks like.
I think the concern I have, because this is our 2030 vision, and this document, correct me if I'm wrong, would be something that would guide us like, next school year.
This was intended to be about a 3-year document.
Okay, okay.
We're only 2 years into its life.
Yeah, I think most of them say by
And-
2028.
Okay.
And so there's the 4 main areas, that's why you have the 1, 2, 3, 4, and so you'll see some overlap because some of it's from a community perspective.
Right.
And some of it was from a staff perspective, and that's the overlap you guys are seeing, and so those discussions, they were important in multiple places, and that's why there's a little bit of overlap in a couple of these things. But yeah, so that was supposed to be like a 3-year, maybe longer document that we were trying to get essentially to this point by the end of this thing.
I wouldn't want us to lose any, and I don't think this is gonna happen, I wouldn't want us to lose focus on any items that we still may need to
Yeah.
kind of stay on just a little bit, a little bit longer before we, hop over to the next aspirational version.
Yeah, but I think it becomes a conversation of what does Devin and his team feel is accomplished in this document?
Yeah.
What do they feel we should have pivoted from, or essentially have we pivoted from just because it's no longer relevant with some of the changes? And then what are those things that are still step 1 of a probably new multi-step process? Right, like some of this stuff was our 3rd or 4th step in an incremental process to get to this end goal that's all the way to the right. And so it can now become step 1 of the new incremental goal, even though we haven't accomplished it.
Yeah.
To your point, we can still keep doing that work.
Yeah, I mean, another way of kind of rephrasing what you just said is, do we feel like we've quote unquote arrived where we want to be? Absolutely not. But has some of this work started to become systematized? Like, yes. Like, it doesn't need to be this, create some urgency around the issue. It doesn't, we could all choose to retire in the next 18 months and the system would keep going. But there's some work where we have to keep, well, not just some. Let's take 1.1 as an example. We still have to embed expectations and accountability and progress measures in order to make sure that the most important objective is getting done.
I think something that stood out so much in the last workshop when we were starting these exercises was the statement that our presenters shared that said, so much of this is expected, like this is minimum. And I think as we think about aspiration, we need to go beyond that. And as looking now in this step, I'm like, oh yeah, like I could see how we've accomplished that.
Lindsay, I'm putting you on the spot. Lindsay's gonna help, she's gonna co-design with me a summer-long experience for our district leadership team to just really clarify and align this to what the board expects. So hearing you talk out loud is super helpful for us, because we want the work to align to, what the community has voted for you for.
Right.
So Lindsay, I'm putting you on the spot. Are there any questions you have for the board just about hearing what you heard?
I don't think so. It feels like what I'm hearing is what are the right next steps in this work, like not necessarily, so correct me if I'm misunderstanding, not necessarily a right turn from the strategic priority areas, the big ideas that are 1, 2, 3, and 4, but what is the right next steps in the work that is really speaking more to the excellence mindset, the block things up here versus what feels like great practice of a great district. It's more aligned to the aspirational pieces, but as they sort of fall under student learning growth and progress, student and staff well-being, staff recruitment and retention, and community connectivity. Am I right? I keep those 4, but refine what are the right next steps for each.
Well, and level up a little bit from them. Like,
Yeah.
they're
That's
still
right.
all very important, but take it to the next step. Take it
Right.
to something that you really want to see, that you really hope to accomplish.
That's right.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's in the room that who wasn't able to walk this whole journey with us when we started this conversation, we wanted as a team to have something greater to chase, right? Like no underperforming schools in Georgetown is not an aspiring goal. Like that's an expectation, right? And so we can't chasten it, just the foundational expectation. We want to maintain that and have something to chase to help us be like that premier public school district in Central Texas.
And I'd say the word that comes to mind, I don't think it's the long duration, but I think a little bit about moonshot and just the idea of what's, what's a meaningful, worthy of pursuit, but not right before us next steps. And then describing what those steps would be, but to accomplish things that are more aspirational and a little harder to grasp.
I think your 4 major areas can update also, like where your staff recruitment and retention was our goal because of issues and things we saw 3 years ago. It may be shifting into staff development or staff support systems rather than recruiting and retention.
Okay.
If we're not saying, if we're not having the big fall off, if we don't have that same concern, we're doing, even our grade program seems to be doing really well. Like, there are things that are happening very well inside of that world now, where we could even refresh what we're talking about in the big.
Well, and that aligns to
and community, and community connectivity is the same way. Like, we rewrote our board goals to ensure that we were in front of the community at least 2 events a year as a board. We've never done that as a district. So some of this work in the community connectivity piece we've done, it's a matter of maintaining that. And so to me, of all the priorities, I think the community connectivity one is the one that we can probably start looking at tweaking that, and that may become a marketing type goal. It may become something, so it's updating and refreshing to what is the current situation. It's still in the same realm of priority area 4.
It's just evolved a bit.
Yeah.
And so not just all the strategic objectives, but let's actually pause and look at that top. Because ideally, your employees, when they come in the community, they should know the 4 strategic priority areas. Is everybody going to know that there's 4.4 somewhere in this document and what it says? Probably not, unless it's relevant to them and the work they're doing. But we should be able at least our day 1, whether it's a year 1 or year 10 teacher that's new in our district, they should at least know mission, vision, values, and those 4 strategic priorities. And so I just think they can reflect some of the work like Melinda and her team is doing, and the transition that Devin is leading, kind of how we promote and represent the district. Same thing with kind of a lot of the teacher retention work and the professional development work you guys have done. Like, I think that teacher voice, the listening tours you do, I think the amount of input from teachers that I know, that the connection they feel to the central office, that
The employee engagement survey.
it used to be 2 separate things, right? Like 5 years ago, that was the central office and we were campus, and never the 2 should mix. And that is kind of fallen apart to a lot of viewpoint. And so it's just really kind of, it's crazy, it's 2 years and how much work you guys have accomplished and how much work you guys have gotten done and changed. And it's really impressive in an organization this size to see it happen that fast, especially when I always criticize districts and bureaucracy for being slow moving, right? So I just think we're at a cool point where you guys get to reflect too and start to kind of push and bend. And yes, that aspiring goals is going to be very, very helpful, but we're also really curious, I think I can talk for the whole board, is what are we missing from the work you guys have been doing and from what you guys know needs to be done that we're not even considering. We're not sitting in your guys' chairs, we're not interacting with your staffs and with these kids every day. And so I know Devin gives me a lot of direct feedback and we have this conversation a lot, but it's where is that misalignment? Because the goal is still classroom to the board. We're aligned, and whether that's the board has to drive a goal or whether we have to listen and adopt something that's for the good of the district, that's kind of what this aspirational window gives us a chance to reflect on.
It's good feedback, so we have an opportunity to kind of maybe bring to the board somewhere in the summer, like this is our recommendation for what we think the district needs in order for us to be able to achieve those aspiring goals.
Yeah. Well, also, I want to say, while hanging on to your point, which is not to lose sight of the foundation.
I love that.
Right. Because you're right, it's only been, we don't have a long track record of this, right? We turned this around very quickly in 2 years, which is fantastic, but we just want to let it stable, keep it stable, rather than be like, all right, we're stable, let's moving on to the, right?
to highlight one of the things James said for that priority 4. I feel like we've got to emphasize the families choosing and community supporting us.
Right.
It just feels like this is outdated, but I think that family choice thing piece will be critical. And then on the student side, the idea around, students thriving and finding a sense of belonging, I think it would be really interesting from y'all's perspective to figure out, like, not necessarily how do we track and get the right data, yes, sure, and like how do we hear student voice and understand their experience in school, which I think would feed into families choosing the district. But I think people are doing some interesting stuff just to find other measures that are based on student perspective that we don't have to do now, but I think would be fun to explore.
And maybe you look at what are some of those measures? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's different.
Smart thinking.
Trustees, really appreciate this conversation. This is awesome feedback for us to plan next steps. I am going to pick up your packets. I took pictures of your statements. Ms. Kinchel, I think you had yours on a device. If you don't mind emailing it to me. Is that? And then, other than that, this concludes the board workshop, unless there's any other questions from the trustees.
Great job, y'all.
All right,
Yeah.
have a good evening.